Hello, today we are looking at reverbs, free versus paid, specifically Logic's own versus my personal favorite and the one I probably use on absolutely everything. So ultimately the choice will be up to you, but hopefully I will be able to sway you one way or another whether to actually buy a reverb or just to stick with that one in your DAW. So what are we actually going to be looking at today? What's going to be included in this video? Firstly, the instrument itself we're going to be using. We're actually going to be using an instrument and using a piece just so that we can play with an instrument with a reverb or no reverb on. I think that will give a better example of how it sounds on and off, and then a piece where really a reverb I feel brings everything together and sticks all the instruments into one room, especially if you're using instruments from different libraries. So this is the instrument. It's the Hyundai U852, and yes, I made it myself. I don't know who made the Decent Sampler version. I made it on Contact originally, but someone put it into the Decent Sampler, so this is free. I'm only using this simply because I know exactly how it was recorded. I know there is absolutely no reverb on. I stuck a microphone, literally the H6, Zoom H6, into the back of a piano, so it's as close as you can quite literally get. So that is why we are using this instrument specifically. What else? We will be looking at Neoverb. This is my reverb of choice. I absolutely love the Izotope products. I use Ozone on absolutely everything. It's a mixing and mastering piece of software that they do, and has this lovely little auto assist button which you can then do and then tweak other bits and bobs. It also helps you get a bass line if you're not very good at things. This is no exception to that as well. Now, if you were to buy a reverb, in my honest opinion, I was stuck between this one, the Neoverb, and the FabFilter Pro R. They both, as you might see, have free trials, 30-day free trial there and a 10-day free trial on Izotopes, which I did and ended up picking this one, Neoverb. Don't pay full price unless you have to. There are always sales. I think I actually picked it up for like $30 off a third-party website, so no complaints there. But we'll get into the nitty-gritty details in a bit. What is the free reverb we're going to be looking at? Specifically, it's within Logic Pro X. This is what I used to use on absolutely everything before I took the plunge and invested in a reverb. It is the Space Designer. Now I know Logic Pro X comes with I think 4 different reverbs. This is the specific one I like out of all of them. There's a couple of favorite little patches I have, which I'll show you, and I have covered, I think, in other videos as well. But without further ado, let's get into the content and the video itself. So this is our instrument. We are going to make sure this reverb is completely off, and let's just quickly have a tinker so you can actually hear the raw sound itself. So there you have it. That is the raw sound, nothing on that. If we stick its own reverb on, we'll go about, what, 25%? This is how it sounds with that one. So most things these days actually come with a reverb already built in. That is that one. That's how it sounds. Let's actually move into Logic's own now. Now I've specifically chosen, if we go into small spaces, a plate. I've gone for the nice and small plate. I love this one, and it's on about -10 wet, 100% dry. This is the raw. Let me just make sure that reverb is off so we can remind you. That's the raw, and now let's turn this baby on. So a little bit of small plate reverb there. As you can see, there is plenty of choices, which can almost come as a disadvantage because you have so much choice, but there is a reverb for absolutely everything there. And of course you can control how much is on simply by this wet and, well, I guess dry knob there, but they do have some pretty good presets. My personal favorite actually from the collection here is if we go into the, I think it's the large space actually, go into the halls, it's the Ancient Church Plus. I love this. It almost gives this cinematic sort of vibe. I'm just going to put that at -15 because it can be a bit much. So nice and distant, long tails, very cinematic, and you have this beautiful space. And this, of course, is free of charge. It will not cost you a penny if you already own Logic Pro X. So that is the free one. Of course, you've got settings here you can mess with, but if you're not too familiar with that sort of thing, 101 presets, just look at the wet knob as well. But let's move into Neoverb, the one I love. So when you open up Neoverb, this is how it will look. You have actually 3 different reverbs on your screen at once, and you can kind of move between them. This reflection, plate, and hall. I find the reflection is the most realistic one. Of course, you can control how spacious they are there, and if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty settings, they are there as well. What really sets this apart is this reverb assist knob up here, which allows you to, basically, it will automatically make a reverb for you, up depending on your selections down here. And we're going to experiment with this with the piece itself later in this video. But for now, let's just look at these 3 different reverbs, turn them on, and actually have a play and see what they sound like. Of course, this is 50% wet. We'll leave it in the middle, double click, we'll recenter it, and just have a quick little tinker. So we'll do the raw sound quickly just to remind us of how it sounds. And now let's turn this on. This is it in the middle. And now let's go just for the reflect, which in all honesty is probably my favorite. It's subtle, but it is there. See, it just brings that little bit more distance, and in all honesty, it sounds super realistic. Let's move over to a plate. And now let's move over to a hall. So it mixes these 3 reverbs together, depending where you place this, of course. So that's a really cool feature. But we, of course, have presets as well, and let's just have a quick look. So all purpose, let's just go for some fresh air. You can see here we have pre-EQ, reverb EQ. We can unmask it because you don't want it clashing with other instruments going on. We have an auto cut. There's a lot of automatic features that kind of come with the Izotope products, which is one of the main reasons I kind of buy them, because they're really cool, quick and easy to use. But let's just jump in and see how this fresh air patch sounds. And just turn that off. What I really like actually about the Izotope one is what you can easily do with reverbs is get this muddy mix. They can create a lot of mud, but I've never found this to be the case with Neoverb. It always puts me on the right path, while with Logic's own you don't have almost those kind of safety nets. With the pre-EQ and reverb EQ, especially with the presets, so you can quite easily muddy up your mix. Of course you can add your own reverb and this, that and the other, but if you don't know what you're doing, you you can quite easily do something very wrong or very right. Let's look at another preset very quickly. Spaces, intimate rehearsal room. And just look at that pre-EQ. That's what I mean when I say muddy. It really does cut that right off. And turn that off. So a lot of it really depends what you're actually going for, what sound do you actually want. And I find, of course, these presets are really fun, but the same is with the case with Logic's Own. You have a lot of presets at your disposal. And let's see if we can find something very similar to that. Let's go for a rehearsal room. They've got a recording room. That might be the closest we have. So let's go with that and see if we can maybe see any difference at all. Let's turn that one off and go back to our Neoverb. I know there was a completely different sound there. To me, Izotope has a more natural sound, and we can even go in and tweak this and move all over the place. We can add some more reflection maybe. More wet or dry, add more reverb to the sound. That sounds a bit too tinny for me. Of course, bring it even further down. The same we can do in Logic's Own. Even with this, we can actually go in and add more, add less. Actually, we want the dry to be 100%. Maybe make this about 7. So of course you can mess around with this to your heart's content, especially if you have a Logic. But let's now move on from the piano and move into a piece itself. So this is the piece without reverb. Obviously there's a little bit of reverb already within it. I've just got the whole piece down, but we've got the recording room preset on. We've changed it to 0 on the dry, 16.5 on the wet. Let's turn it on. Going to emphasize it a little bit more so you can. To me, it just brings a piece together, reverb. It puts all the instruments into one room, especially if you're using multiple libraries, even with some with a little bit of reverb already on them. Just one reverb when you're mixing and mastering can really help bring everything into this one space. So let's move over to Neoverb. We're actually going to use this reverb assist button. Let's actually turn it on for a start as well. Press play. And we're going to go for about midway, medium, clean, and let's hit next and see what happens. So this is with it on. If I turn it off, okay, it's a lot closer sound, but if we turn it on, you can see it all shoved into this space. Of course we can move this around. Maybe you want a bit less, put that on 20%. Turn it off. To me, that is very evident in the drums, because the drums are quite dry, and just shoving everything in this nice little space where they sound like they're all actually playing in a room instead of individual places. That's at least what reverb does for me. Of course, depending on the style of music you're composing for, you want to drag things closer or further away. But when I'm using reverb right at the end to mix and master, I normally use it to put everything in a space and give it some coherency. And so to me, this right now, the drums are a little bit too dry, and if just sticking a little bit on there, maybe a little bit more there, puts everything nicely in this little room. And this is the main thing I love about this Neoverb, is the fact that you have these three different reverbs that you can kind of mix between and go, oh, I want a bit more realism, maybe a bit more dramatic. How dramatic? Do we want some hall? Do we want some plate? You can, of course, flick through the different ones here: room, plate, chamber. So it doesn't even have to be a room. It can be a plate, it can be a chamber, it can be, well, there you go, room, plate, chamber. Up here, we can go down to hall, you can go to chamber as well, and reflection, well, that's what you got up there, sadly. But you can flick between them and very easily dial in the sound you are going for. And that's what I love so much about Neoverb, is the user friendliness, as well as the realism and the lack of mud on mixes. While with Logic's Own, it's not as user-friendly as I feel Neoverb is. Of course, you can get into the nitty-gritty, and if you know your stuff, of course, you can play with a lot of these settings. But I hope that's helped at least show you how fine the line is, I guess, between free and paid reverbs. At least my personal take on it. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.